Well, it's been a couple of days on the Honda here since done the valve adjustment, and I think we have fixed part of the issue. It is no longer doing the cold start stall, but I'm still not very happy with the fuel trims. It still is taking out a lot of fuel. It has stopped doing it on short term though. It's only doing it long term. Short term seems like it's stabilized. So it does seem better. But I'm still not very happy with it. But I've got to go get some more gas in this thing. I put gas in it. I've been driving it a little bit. It's about out. But we're going to drive it again just to go put some gas in it. And we're going to take some more captures. Just double check a few things. But I think I'm going to end up shipping it like this. It is not setting a check engine light, and the customer isn't too concerned about it unless the light comes back on. So we may ship it like this, but we're going to take some after captures with the picoscope first. So I was really surprised at how many of you actually in the first video in the comments posted about valve adjustments. I knew that's kind of a thing with these, like they need valve adjustments every something like 100,000 miles or something like that. I'm not real sure, but I've never done them aside from a long time ago when I had my own Honda. So in a diagnostics setting, I've never ran into it, but I also rarely work on these things. I never see Hondas come in with drivability issues. I don't know why. I see them with like ABS issues, airbag issues, and some other things, but very rarely do I get engine drivability stuff. So really surprised. You guys know some things that I don't. You probably know a lot of things that I don't because I'm still pretty new to this. But anyways, I'm still not very happy, like I said, with the fuel trims. I've got the scan tool hooked up. We're collecting some data here. We're in closed loop. Let's see. A lot of you keep commenting about the map pressure. It does get very low sometimes, like 3.9 psi, something like that. But it seems like anytime I'm driving or air conditioner's on, like if it's sitting here idle with the air conditioner on, I get higher pressure, which I mean I should. The engine's opening the IAC a little bit to give a little bit more RPM, so I would expect my pressures to not be drastically low. But I don't like these fuel trims. See, we're still taking out 14% right now. If I let this thing just sit and idle, it gets down to like 18.75% that it's taken out, which is, it's not good. But like right now we got 7.5 psi on the map. Turn the air conditioner off and that'll probably drop a little bit. We're still warming up too. So there, 4.2. See, engine coolant temp's only 186. So not completely up to temp yet, but 4.2. I don't think that's bad. I feel like you've got to take into account your elevation to this. I mean, if you're at extremely high elevations compared to sea level, your map sensor is going to read differently. So I don't really think that's too far out of what it should be. But let me get some gas. We're going to drive it a little bit more, get it up to full operating temp, and get some captures and test a few other things before we ship this thing. Alright, so I've got the Pico set back up how I had before, where I've got a ignition 1 trigger on my coil command. The intake pulse sensor stuck in the same port on the intake. and the exhaust set up just like I had it with the pressure transducer. And I'm having a hard time remembering, but I think my exhaust does look different. The intake looks basically the same, which, I mean, I didn't really change hardly anything with the intakes. They were all pretty fine. They were all measuring at 10 thousandths of an inch, which is pretty decent. It was in spec. I did snuggle them back down to 9 thousandths, but they don't seem to have really any difference. But my exhaust, if I remember right, the peaks of my exhaust were a little more pointy. This section here, if I remember right, was a little more pointy and didn't have quite the W to it. So I think this is looking better. We'll do a side-by-side of these two waveforms here and compare the before and the after. What do you guys think? Does it look a lot better? I think so. It still looks like it's uneven at the bottom. I still don't understand that. Like I say, I'm not good with exhaust waveforms, but the pressure pulses definitely look better. So I think we've definitely fixed the stall issue with the valve adjustment. The running rich, however, we're still currently right now intake manifold pressure. See, we're at 3.9. Let's see what our short term or long term is. 12.5 right now. Short term, okay, so that's not too bad. So right now that 12.5%, that's not terrible. Of course, everything else is all fine and dandy. So yeah, you did have some good suggestions about what else could cause this rich condition, like fuel vapors down in the oil. That's a good one. Purge valve. Well, I've got the purge valve undone right now and my trims are a little bit better. So you guys thought maybe the purge valve was leaking. I know for a fact the purge valve doesn't leak, but I'll show you that anyway. So I've got a few things I can do to kind of rule out oil or the purge valve, and we'll do those. Let me get this Pico stuff cleaned back off. I don't know that I'm going to use it for anything else. I don't think so, but this waveform right here I think's better. So some of you had also wanted to see a relative compression on this, as well as when it was happening, when it would stall, things like that. I've got screenshots of all that. I tried to always try to put an end cylinder in this thing in the mornings when it was stalling and crank it up and try to catch whatever was happening in the end cylinder. But as luck would have it, every time I would take the plug and coil out, put my transducer in there, it would never stall. I'm not real sure if having the dead miss changed something, how the computer calculated issues with the engine and basically would keep itself running. I'm not real sure, but from day one when I seen this, I had a feeling that it was something to do with valves, like sticking or something like that. I just could never catch it with an end cylinder and prove it. And I never could catch it with intake pulse sensor. I even tried the exhaust trick. I never could see anything that kind of stuck out to me that, yep, that's my issue. So that's why I didn't redo the test, because I pretty much already knew I wasn't going to catch anything that would be beneficial. But screenshots and all that, there you go. So the one screenshot that I have, or I've got one good screenshot of when it would stall and I immediately try to spin it back over. I could catch the low compression in the RC test, the relative compression test. And you can see it how I have the ignition command here, and then I've got like two, if I remember right, two low humps and then two high humps, and then you could see everything build back up and be even as it started and ran. So I kind of figured all along I was having some kind of valve issue, but the thing that kept throwing me off was the fuel trims just being so bad, because I was thinking in the back of my head, it's like, I can't catch this with an in-cylinder, so what if it is over fueling to the point where it was washing the rings down, basically letting it bypass compression on the rings or something like that. But never could prove it. So yeah. But anyways, we're going to check this purge valve. All you wanted to or a bunch of you had some comments saying purge valve bad, leaking, whatever, that could be causing your issue, and you're absolutely right. We could be sucking out fuel vapors out of the tank, causing a rich condition. So I've got my favorite purge valve test set up here. It's basically my cheap $15 Harbor Freight meter vacuum gauge, and you're gonna see this hose right here. This is the hose coming from the tank, and I know that because right down here you can see that green cap. That was where you would stick a evap tester to smoke test this thing. So got it unplugged, got my gauge hooked up here, and then I've also got the purge valve unplugged so that it can't turn that thing on. And when we crank this should stay 0. And we are up to temp where we've been driving it, so everything is warmed up and nothing. So something I also like to do is I'll take and kind of plug the solenoid back up, if I can find it, and get it to pulse. Well, right now it's not even going to be commanding it. Yeah, if it was commanding it, I could, let it suck down, unplug it, and watch this and see if it kept pulling vacuum or not. Basically, I would hit the purge valve a few times, let it kind of relax, see if we randomly get it to leak. This one, no. It always stays like that. Always 0, unless that purge valve was commanded. See, now. See it? So that purge valve's commanded on now. Let me get down here and I can feel it. Alright, so we're 0 here. Basically unhook this, reset it, nothing. So if I take this and kind of plug it back up, there we go, nothing. Until it starts turning that back on again, nothing. That's basically like the easiest, best way to test purge valves, really. Just an old mechanical gauge. Works great. So purge valve is not leaking, not sucking in vapor. So next thing you guys had was sucking fuel vapor out of the oil. If it had basically fuel contamination, fuel vapors down in the oil, it's then sucking those vapors back in through the intake PCV and burning that off. So next test, we're just going to unhook the PCV valve hose. And if I remember right, it's this hose right here. So we're going to just take these, get that out of the way, give that a nice little twist to break the seal and pull that off. Okay, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to stick my vacuum gauge on here to seal this port back up and we'll get a vacuum reading. And we'll unplug the purge valve down here. So let's start it up. So we'll see our manifold vacuum, and then we will also use a scan tool and pull up the fuel trims again and do a comparison there. Alright, so manifold vacuum here. You can see our gauge is about 22 and a half, I think, yep. And our manifold pressure sensor is reading 3.9. Now you got to do some math, but if you do the math, this is actually really close to what scan tool pressure is saying. So I think the map sensor is reading pretty accurately. I think we've got good vacuum. If you notice though, the fuel trims have corrected some. We're down to -10 long term, but I think that's kind of misleading. I do have basically crankcase separated and the purge valve separated, but let me show you something. If we rev this thing, the fuel trims are still bad. Get back in here. So if we rev this, just give it some throttle here, our fuel trims tank back down negative. We're holding at about 3,000 RPM almost. Total trim right there is 20%. I don't particularly like that. You see our intake manifold vacuum is still down around 3. I don't particularly like it. So right then, it can't possibly be sucking fuel vapors out of the tank or out of the crankcase. I still think it's running rich somewhere. I just don't feel confident in making that call on the injectors. So I still think there's probably something wrong with them. Realistically, I mean, your fuel trims should be very close to zero all the time. If everything's perfect, running great, you know, plus or minus 5, sure, that's probably pretty normal across the board with everybody. -10, that's a little out there. It's getting borderline. So I still think there's something wrong with the car, but like I said in the beginning, this customer, he's fine with it. He's gonna take it. They might change the oil in it. I don't know, but he's gonna take it. They're gonna put it on the lot, probably sell it like this, and if something comes up later with the light coming on, then we'll address it then. And more than likely, we're just gonna put a set of injectors in it at that point, because I feel like I've ruled out everything else that it could be that could cause this thing to run rich. So yeah, what do you guys think? Do you think it needs injectors? Do you think this is acceptable? I'm not a Honda guy, really. I don't work on them enough to know what normal is on these things, but to me it's not normal. So but that's what we're gonna leave it with. He's gonna take this thing and run with it like it is. So thanks for watching, everybody. We'll see you guys later.